This thing that I have found is what I would call my gracious space. All right, folks, here we are. Jack Carlisle here. We have another round of Gracious Spaces with the lovely and the talented Annie Morgan.
Oh, you flattered me.
Well, what do they say? Happy wife, happy life.
Tell my husband that.
Happy work wife.
Happy work wife.
Yeah.
Yes.
I cannot be more excited about today's guest because I just am. This is going to be a really cool conversation. We have a private investigator with us. His name is Eric Peterson. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And not only is this the go-to guy if you need anyone, not that I've ever used him myself, but just saying, folks, don't cross my path. He also has a podcast called PI Files, and we're going to definitely encourage you to go because it's not only about certain cases and his experiences, but it's also a great avenue for information of what to avoid, scams, that kind of thing. So as we move forward in today's conversation, I'm sure we'll hit on those. But again, welcome, Eric. How you doing this morning?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Does it feel awkward being in that chair versus the host chair?
It does. And I don't know what you're going to ask. Like, I really don't know what you're going to ask. Yeah. You did a background or something, maybe? I don't know.
No, we don't know what we're going to ask either.
All right.
I ended up hiring another private investigator.
Yeah, great. He called me and said he was doing it. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing. I know for the entertaining world and what you do, Annie, it's a small world. What I do, the plant business. What about the PI business? Do you all kind of all talk and collectively?
Yeah. In my opinion, I take it. I view it as I did in law enforcement, as we're all on the same team. There are probably some folks out there that view it as an extreme competition, but I don't, because there's plenty of work out there. There's plenty of niches. There's people that do polygraph. There's people that do that I give work to. There's people that analyze phones and devices that I give work to and debugging. Yeah. And then there's other investigators, and sometimes investigators get overwhelmed and you need help. So I view it as a team effort. I belong to a state association and a national association and then a world association. So I just linked up with a world association, so we're seeing requests worldwide. Wow. And then I just interviewed a guy who's involved in that heavily from the UK to get his perspective, and then he interviewed me. Yeah. So yeah, in my opinion, it's all one team and you work together.
Yeah, I love that. You all have your lane and expertise, and you go to that person at that time.
Can you give us just a little background on how long you've been doing this and what prompted you to start this in the first place?
So I'll start from the beginning. So I grew up in Chicago in a law enforcement family. My dad was a former Marine, and at the Chicago, he worked Chicago PD, and so did my uncle. And so I grew up doing that, and we always came out to California to visit, and I loved it. And I knew I wanted to get into law enforcement since grade school. So an opportunity came up where I did like a student exchange program. So I was at a college called Northeastern. They said, "Hey, you can go to Cal State San Bernardino." Didn't know where San Bernardino was. I said, "Okay." And so
California, here I come.
Yeah. And speaking of that camaraderie, my dad would be like an ambassador to people that would come from out of state, out of the country, take them around Chicago, show them the city. And, if they had cases. So he would be known as the person that they would call to take him around. The majority of his career was in homicide, and then he rose through the ranks. But so coincidentally, we met some LAPD people. He knew some detectives from robbery homicide in the 80s, a pretty good squad that handles high-level crimes. And so they were out at a barbecue, and I ended up living in Laverne with a polygraph person and then commuting to San Bernardino. And then taking the test. So I took the test for LAPD, LA County Sheriff, and got hired at 21. And so I did 20 years total in law enforcement. And then I've been in the executive protection world because of just supplementing the income, and then the private investigations world. So executive protection while I was in law enforcement, private investigations since 2013. And and then just kept building the business. And I still have a security company as well. So it kind of intertwines with the stalking stuff and all that.
Yeah. So your calls that you get, I would imagine daily, can you investigate this? Or do they range from the simple I'm being cheated on to something a little bit more?
We get those, and we'll handle them if we can help them. The one we've got one right now that essentially it's a fraud where these really nice people inherited a property, commercial property, and these really not so nice people are trying to say, well, your dad gave us a lease and we're going to stay here forever, because they're selling the land and the property to developers. And now these people came up with a fraudulent agreement. So now they got to get served and surveillance, and we got to do some research. So I love those types of cases because it involves the field work in addition to the database work and the digging. Yeah. And then we have a lot of employee cases where people are either working at other jobs or stealing clients or stealing products. Mm-hmm. So we have a handful of those recently.
Yeah. I imagine your work starts as soon as you pick up the phone. You've got to vet them. Is this real? What's going on? Is it they're just trying to?
Yeah, a good portion of our work comes from attorneys or an attorney's involved. But that's so the number one thing people say to me is, I've never called a private investigator before. I go, no problem. Just walk me through it and give me the scenario of what you're dealing with. If you could give me the cliff notes, that would be great, or bullet points. And then I'll plug in what I recommend we do and say, hey, this is what we've done for other clients. It's been successful. Sometimes I'll say, do you have an attorney? Because I recommend you get one, because I'm not going to give you legal advice, and we should work jointly on this situation. And then I do have access to a lot of attorneys that I've used before, some of which will give free advice. They're just good people. So yeah, I'll get that call, and yes, there is a vetting process, because a lot of people, unfortunately, there's people out there that think that they're hearing things, and so I'll direct them to their family or something like that.
Well, I have to say, real quick, Andy, that your voice is so calming. I think if I were to pick up that phone and call, I would be in an agitated state or whatever. You just immediately would probably bring me down. Just by, isn't that?
I appreciate that. Yeah.
No, it's just like, just use reason here.
Gotta tell my wife about that.
Is that the nature of the business? So when you meet with clients and they are in a state of mind that you have to approach them a little like slowly, or to get information, especially, I would imagine, especially where there's an affair, a marriage on the line.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of this as well. Sometimes people tend to go off on a tangent, and especially when they're dealing with something like that, family issue, crime, somebody stealing, scam. So I'll just try to rein them in and talk about the facts, and let's break this down. And I think one of the best things that we do collectively with myself and my employees, but what I love is taking something that's very chaotic and bringing it down to its simplest form. And that case that I was mentioning to you before we started, it was very chaotic. It had a lot to do with different counties. And I told the client, nobody cares about your case as much as you do. It may originate here in this city, but they may not care what happens in San Bernardino, Riverside, Mexico, whatever. So I will bring all of that and we will present it, but they have to be involved. And then I actually forgot about what you asked, but
the calmness of your voice and approaching.
I think the number one skill. There's a lot of skills that a good private investigator, or maybe somebody dealing with the public like an officer, should have, is just listening and stepping back. And so I let them do that. Sometimes I may have to put them on mute because I may have to do some stuff or type on the keyboard. But I will know exactly what to do a lot of times in the first couple of minutes, and then I'll let them rant. And then sometimes I'll have to say, hey, listen, I have to go into a meeting or take a call, but this is what we can do to go forward in the process. So yeah. And sometimes, it's not maybe it's not a good business thing, but it's a good ethical thing. And it helps with, people have said this in reviews. Sometimes I'll tell them this is not necessary, because one of my things is, it's not necessary to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I recommend we do this, and whatever's going to serve the case, where we'll bring in the attorney, let's work together on it. Whereas maybe other businesses or other investigators may say, oh, let's do it all, and I'm going to need this amount of money. And I've had people make comments, they'll try to overcharge or whatever.
Yeah.
So you mentioned ethical. Do you find yourself sometimes in a situation where your ethics may be challenged?
I think there's certain things that people may want to do that I just tell them right off the bat. I tell them we can't, and that's I've got the legal experience in law enforcement with knowing the laws in California, but then also to be licensed, you have to pass a test. You have to, continue your education. So one example would be a GPS tracker. You can't do that if you don't own the car or are part owner of the car. And I'll tell that to them right off the bat. Another thing is they may want to listen in on conversations. I said, we can't do that either. There's laws against that. And a lot of times they'll respect that and they'll say, okay, because maybe the person they all called before me, oh, we'll do it all.
Yeah.
And then you'll see these news stories where they're doing it on politicians or, in different states, or they're messing around. And it's just not a good thing. So yeah, it happens, but I recognize it immediately.
Okay. Well, Andy, I'll remove that tracker from your car.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, that's good to know, though, because I wouldn't have thought. I would like, hey, if that person's doing me wrong, I'm going to slap that sucker on there and think it's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
But that's when emotions come in. And I would imagine a lot of people, when they're in that emotional state, it's amplified. And that's when they need to be calmed down a lot.
What I noticed is a lot of people, depending on what they're going through, whether it's a civil case or a family law or criminal, I'm going to go after them. I'm going to attack. I'm going to go, like, come on, slow down. Let's do things legally and ethically and maybe just get past it. And, and everybody gets sometimes in those positions where they're, hey, they did me wrong. I'm going to use everything. Yeah.
It feels like you wear many hats even before you get to your PI side, right? You like what you just said, you got to talk people off the ledge first, and then you have to kind of counsel them to the right and wrong of it, right? And and that's even before you start to get to the nuts and bolts of why they're even calling you or sitting in front of you, right?
You're right. You got to sift through that noise and then just kind of break it down to what's possible, what they're dealing with. And then, like that case that I talked about, they want to attack it from all sides, and they should, because this is illegal, what these people are doing. And they think that they may be doing something illegal at this business. I don't think they have a business license. I don't think they have, but, to catch somebody doing something illegal, I got a call, hey, we think there's drugs coming out of this apartment. We own the apartment complex. It's not easy because I used to work narcotics, you got to spend some time doing that, and you can't be pulling people over in the private sector. So you got to let people know what you can do, what you can't do, and then, just kind of educate them.
There's probably a process, like that's a really good example of a landlord gets a call from a neighbor, hey, they're pushing drugs out of the apartment next to me or whatever. Okay, let's call the police, and there's a process, and they might want to call you thinking they're going to get through that process faster. It's like, okay, I'm going to get them red-handed, but it's still a process, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there's still something. And I got a call today, stalking in Long Beach, and she said, well, my daughter went to the police. They didn't do anything. And I said, okay. And she said, well, she's going to go to the watch commander. I said, I want to let you know. I was a watch commander. I said, well, first of all, she's probably not going to be able to talk to the watch commander. They're dealing with other things. But if it's a crime, they'll report it. If it's a crime, it'll be investigated, and then it's up to the DA to handle it. I said, at this point, you don't have anything. This guy may be mentally unstable, walking around the neighborhood. You may think it's stalking, and let's explore that. Let's see what he's doing specifically, and maybe do some counter surveillance on her and surveillance on him, and see what you got. But yeah, people want to rush things. And I think we're in a society where, with the phones and the internet and AI and everything, oh, well, I can do this. Okay, let's see. And so I am being brought in on crimes that are occurring, and I am getting confessions, and I am working with the police. But yeah, it does take time.
Well, you're in a state of you feel violated,
Yeah.
you know, and that hurts. You know?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that protocol, working with the police. That's kind of, do they welcome you into that world, or do they like,
I think so far it's been great. I've worked cases with LAPD. I've worked cases with Orange PD, Garden Grove. I had a theft. It was an employee at a big company. They had the footage. They had everything. For some reason, they didn't arrest this guy. So I contacted him, got a confession, and then the detective contacted me. I sent him the confession and my paperwork, and they filed the case. And he just had to talk to me, and then he could testify in court. And so, but I always tell the client, if they've involved police, let them know you've hired me, and please connect me to them, because I'm not going to step on their toes.
Right.
And because I've been working as a detective, if somebody invaded my case, I wouldn't be happy about it. So far it's been great. I mean, I had the one in LAPD. It was a stolen car, stolen property type of thing, camera equipment. And I worked with the detective, and the detective said, hey, had you not hired him, I wouldn't have been as proactive, because they were kind of all over the map. And I think they actually lied to her at one point, the detective. But I was able to get surveillance and get the person, and we knocked on the door, and then I just backed off and let them do their thing.
well, they have their own calls they're dealing
Oh,
with.
yeah.
I mean, there's probably priority in those calls and who comes first. And I mean, they're dealing with a whole bunch of mess.
It doesn't stop. And I remember, I was working in Harbor Division, so Wilmington, Harbor City, San Pedro area. It was just two of us. We shared a computer, and then we had three ring binders between both of us on crimes. So you're only going to investigate the ones that have good leads. You can follow up with maybe an arrest has been made or something like that.
Yeah.
So I really love mystery movies. I love action, mystery. I love a good sleuth movie. And so do you think that because of these movies that the public might have a misconception of the reality of what goes on behind the scenes in your industry? And even the conversation we just had, sometimes when I'm watching these movies, the PI is not welcomed on the scene when the detectives arrive, and now there's a private investigator, and they're not always welcome, but then they do have a relationship sometimes. So how do you feel about that? Do you think that movies have a certain impression on the audience of the reality of what you deal with every day?
Yeah, I think movies and TV sometimes can get it right. There's a TV show called Bosch that is extremely realistic about the LAPD, and it was Michael Conley is an author, and he did that, and Amazon. It's a great show, and it captured, because he was a robbery homicide detective, and was working Hollywood division, and then ends up as a PI, and then you see like that navigation. But he was hardcore and all very aggressive on cases, and he really cared. So I think they get it right sometimes, and then they're always going to have that fiction in movies and TV. But I think one of the things that you hear a lot between officers and detectives and even the private sector, that they think things could be done quickly, like CSI, like getting DNA back quickly or things like that. Oh, it's, you know what I mean? Everything takes money. Everything's a process. And the case I was telling you about before, the first crime occurred 2021. He just got convicted last month, April 2026. And that included attempted murder and a lot of felonies.
Was he in and out of jail at that point, or was he out all the time?
He was out the entire time except a portion, like in the middle, when he got arrested on an unrelated charge, but he wasn't in for an extremely long time. But there was some lag time between the time he got out from that unrelated charge until he got arrested and charged for the Orange County stuff. And so, and that was a time where the clients and victims were worried still. So, and then one of the things that stood out were the clients were kind of frustrated because a lot of information wasn't being given to them. And I said, listen, it is a process. And eventually they ended up talking to the DA, and the DA was great. And she talked to them the entire time up until after the the conviction and he admitted to everything, and the court case, the hearing. But they were like, oh, nobody's saying anything. And I said, well, they're not going to give you any of their behind the scenes investigative secrets, especially since this guy, you've known this guy before and you know people that know him. So why are they going to give you any sort of hidden behind the scenes stuff about their process? Because you're essentially helping his defense.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of educate him on that. So yeah, I think people have a different, depending on what they're watching, you know.
Right, right. But it's interesting too, because a client would tend to think that they are entitled to all the information, right?
Yeah,
When they're not.
correct.
Huh.
Yeah.
And for those reasons, the connections down the road and just,
Oh yeah. And I specifically told him, because this one was very weird, because we thought that there was some weird stuff involved. And even the detective from Orange said, do you think, what's up with them, with this debt being owed? And I said, listen, I've been asking him at different times, and asking the sister and stuff. And I said, they're just hardworking people.
Yeah.
The guy was just kind of very unique in thinking that he was owed money.
Yeah. You mentioned, I think about families, and just because you're brother or sister to somebody does not mean you're a good person.
You're right.
So there's going to be a lot of friction or turmoil within families that you have to address. And I have to admit, I think I even had to catch myself a while ago. When we sat down, one of the first things I said was like couples, and we were, cheating. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, I think, where our mind goes. Mm-hmm. Private investigators, is we want to know that part. But look at all these other cases you've mentioned. I'm like, holy cow, yeah. And so getting family members involved is, there's sort of property values, inheritances. Sad, that's a sad situation. When you've grown up with somebody, you think you know them, all of a sudden they're not the same person.
Right, right. When they get older, and now there's property on the line or money's on the line, and
greed.
Yeah, and then greed sets in. So, how much of your cases are fueled by greed?
I think that the majority. I just got a call yesterday. Perfect of what you're describing. Two brothers. Yeah. I don't know the age difference, who's older, who's not. But the grandmother or mother passed away, and both of them were like the executors, and he thinks the other brother was like siphoning money. So now he wants to run a credit check on the grandmother and financial check on all. And I said, bring in an attorney and do it the right way, and because they can subpoena all that stuff. And he thinks he's just taken. And I think a lot what I see is a lot of things. I know that sometimes people, this is going to be insulting if I do a contract, or this is going to be this way, but it protects everybody. Do something and just have everything laid out, because I've seen how this story ends if you don't. And so, regardless, sometimes people will say, I didn't know that they would do that. Yeah. Oh, okay. That they had $1 million in there. And I've even had calls where, and I did investigative work on this, where the person thought her friend was drugged because of this particular house and the value. She was drinking heavily, and then, when somebody dies, they have a coroner's report and the police respond and toxicology and all this, but she thought it was suspicious. So she thought it was like a murder from the guy for the money. But it happens very, very often.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this how many years now?
So in law enforcement, I started in 95, and then in this 2013, so over 30.
So through those years, you've built up an instinct, I'm sure, right? So how much of your instinct do you run with, and how much do you use technology?
So I use the instinct quite often. I use, that trust but verify method. Mm-hmm. And then I think technology is just a tool to confirm or deny certain things. So
out of technology, do you feel that social media, do you gravitate to social media, or what out of that do you find as the best tool?
So the best tool, in my opinion, is the databases that kind of solely that we use, that is linked to hard evidence. So when we do like a comprehensive background, it covers criminal, civil, financial, that type of thing. So if a woman or man says, well, he owes this money to these people, and okay, I know he's been arrested. All right. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. Just like the surveillance when they say, because nothing really beats like the boots on the ground, because anybody can do a social media post. They can have fake stuff that, a lot of it's fake for some of these people. Social media is good, though. We just had a case where this woman, it was dating this guy, and then maybe they broke up and accused him of a sexual act, and just started going off online. Turns out she's done this to numerous people, had restraining orders. So now you go back and talk to those people, pull the documents, because getting to the restraining order topic, I've been doing protection for a client for a restraining order in Ventura County. And they said, well, Judge, this guy has tried to stab somebody. There's a news article about it. The judge says, I don't care about a news article. Show me where the charge is. So he got convicted.
Facts.
We ended up calling the guy that was the victim on our lunch break, and we got him to testify. And then the restraining order got accepted. But so yes, I take it all and use it as a totality, just not just one piece.
So would you consider you combine old school with the modern approach?
I like the old school, and because there can be database searches, and or a database. So in the database searches, there could be database like maybe breaches. There can be clerical input. So there's been times where we've gone to locate somebody, and the data has crossed to where same name, different person. Ooh. So I go, hey, well, this isn't you. No. And so it happens. Yeah. So anytime you're involving humans and involved in that data input, you can have those weird things that happen. So I want to use all the pieces of the puzzle. Right. But nothing, in my opinion, and going back to that Bosch show that I mentioned, a thing that he had on his desk is get outside and knock on doors. Nothing is going to do that. A lot of times people think, oh, can you get where they work on a database search? Maybe, maybe not. There's no really requirement for an employer to say, hey, I got to report you to this database and you're working here. Yeah. I said, the number one thing is surveillance. So I get them to go into that job, and then we say, hey, is Danny working today? You know? And so, I don't think anything's going to ever beat that. Yeah. You know?
Mm-hmm. Is there one case that caused you to have a different perspective of the human behavior?
I think I've had because of the law enforcement experience, I was kind of jaded, and I think I've gotten better after being in the private sector. I've gotten to understand people a little bit better and not be so one-sided, like tunnel vision. Tunnel vision. There's a term. Yes. So I think I've expanded my view and understood why people do what they do and have more empathy, because I've worked for defense cases as well. Yeah. And I've seen certain things that maybe officers or detectives would do that probably is different and probably shouldn't have been done. One particular, I think I've always been kind of jaded. And then, that's hard to answer. I think I've just gotten better and have a better view, and I'm able to help more people out.
What about a case that's you've put you in danger or some sort of precarious, like, oh.
So the one case that I mentioned with the extortion, stalking, arson, and attempted murder, and then we were doing surveillance.
That pretty much covers it all.
Covers it all, yeah. Right, you got all the
that guy was very
groups,
busy.
Yeah.
He was a busy man.
Yeah. So that one, we were doing surveillance at night. And if the clients had unlimited funds, we would have caught the guy doing it. But this guy was living at different places, driving different cars. So the police were even trying to catch up with him. Huh. But where he parked to shoot at the client's residence is where we would have parked. So he would have parked right in front of us, is where we would have parked. And it would have probably been a shooting. Yes. So that one, for sure. And I did do surveillance on that one, and I had another guy do it. I wouldn't use some of my other employees that weren't comfortable in that. And I would call Orange PD in, and because I'm like, oh, here we go. And so they ended up getting one guy that was kind of drank too much, and he pulled over. He just happened to pull over in the wrong spot because I was watching the client's house, and he pulled over. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is it. So I called Orange PD in. They stopped him, and he just wanted to pull over because he drank too much.
Yeah.
And then, but you get to see like the intricacies of the neighborhood at night, later at night after everybody goes to bed.
Yeah.
So I thought that would have been nuts. But yeah, in law enforcement, there was a lot of crazy stuff as well.
There's got to be a certain amount of, I'm going to use the word rush to this job.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Especially in law enforcement, you have a little bit more comfortableness because you have your car and that's marked, and you have the equipment and your partner and maybe other people at certain scenes. Sometimes with this, you're just by yourself because the budget doesn't allow for a team of people. In narcotics, we had 3 to 5 people, helicopter, all this stuff. So there's a rush. Yeah. And even like, I've got this one where I want to contact this guy. It's a $2 million theft. And so I'm thinking of a strategy to do it. And I have female investigators that work, with me. And I was going to bring a female investigator to kind of lighten the mood, maybe so he feels a little easy. So it's not just me coming and knocking on his door. So I try to use certain tactics to ease that.
Yeah.
I like the rush.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Well, using the tactics is a part of the rush.
Yeah, yeah. So,
That's a part of the whole game. It's not a game, but the protocol, the what you need to do to get what
strategy,
you need.
Yeah.
Because bad people do bad things.
Yeah. Yep.
I would imagine even looking at some of the background information, if you had someone who's all of a sudden they purchase homes in 3 different states and use random mortgage companies. I mean, that's sort of a ding, ding, ding right there.
Yeah.
To set you down the path you need to go, okay, there's something to this. And I will say what I do know about you, and it's in your heart, I think. You want to get these guys. You want them to pay. I mean, that's harsh to say. That's dramatic,
No.
I
mean, one of the things that I tell people is I go after people that go after people. I'll stalk the stalker. We'll go after and we'll do it within our parameters. And then when I bring police in, that would be ideal. Because like that situation I said that was the most dangerous one. Yeah. We already told Orange PD, hey, we're doing surveillance these days. And if we see suspicious cars, we're going to bring them in. And they rushed because they knew the severity of this because they were already involved with the arson and they knew how hardcore this was. And, as an officer, you want that type of work because that's the extreme. But I'm very passionate about it, especially with, these criminal cases.
I don't know if this is the right word or not. Do you have a favorite type of case?
So the one that some of them I've mentioned already, but the one that involves both sides of what we do, the investigative database research side and the tactics of being safe and the field work and the surveillance. One we had years ago that keeps being a recurring client because some of these employees will never learn. They're stealing this construction stuff that's in demand, and so it combines everything that we're doing, and it's a criminal and civil. And they brought in their attorneys and they went after these people, and so that type of stuff where you have a good client, a good business that is helping out their employees in the community. Yeah. And
so those employees see it as a quick buck to turn. They're going to resell that equipment or. Yep. Yeah.
So they were selling it at offer up, and then we were going to different construction sites. And one of the things that stands out is we went to, I don't know, maybe like Bell Gardens or something. It was and that type of business starts super early in the morning, 5 a.m. Yeah. And we went there, and I went there with employees and a Spanish speaking employee that was very involved, that was on the good side. I said, hey, this is all of their equipment here. What would you like to do? Oh, take it. Yeah. And then that guy ended up getting arrested down the road and having to be civilly liable for all the theft and all that stuff. But yeah, it's either that or the police are coming.
I think of all the types of cases, are the affairs, where did that fall in your top five like or don't like?
I like it because I give the people work. I have some great workers that, and some of them are interested. They get interested in that stuff. But I like keeping the workers busy every day.
Because I anticipate that that's a whole different energy coming from the person that's coming to you.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And for obvious reasons, right? And I think we were talking earlier where you're taking photograph and you've taken enough, but the client doesn't feel it's enough. They want one more. And the question would be, is that for themselves or is that for the case, right? And so is it something they can just continually, throw in front the spouse, and then there's this one and this one and this one. So how does, and I think when you say you're a private investigator, I think that's where everyone's heads go, right? They go to the affairs and catching them in the act. And,
Well, I think maybe TV has led us to think that.
Exactly.
That's what we see mostly on TV.
Yeah.
I'll give you the number. It's low in terms of my interest, but I want to help people and I want to do a good job for them. I'll even counsel them because they'll call me and they'll ask for the advice. Well, what would you do here? And they'll ask for, almost like a counseling session.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, listen, this is what I believe you should do. But one that kind of stands out that's funny that ended up going to another investigator I know, a woman, I think she's from LA, going out with a guy, I think he's in South Orange County, married. He says he's not married. Okay. And, I want to know how much he says he's separated from his wife. And it was like so extreme. And it got to the point where I'm like, no, we're done. And sometimes you see people at their worst in terms of clients and emotion. And, and then they think that you can just, maybe put a drone over or, climb over fences and,
Hide
just,
in the bushes.
yeah. And so I said, hey, we're done. She ended up going to another investigative agency that gave it to this guy that I know. And I go, good luck. And then he said the same thing. Yeah. She's nuts. And then she tried calling me again. I said, like, why? Just, you're fighting a losing battle. Dude is married. He's living at home. That's it. What else do you need to know?
Yeah.
But
do you find yourself just in the day-to-day running errands, your mind's always clocking things that could potentially be...
Yep. And then the safety aspect of stuff. And then also thinking about cases. Some officers in law enforcement didn't like working as a detective because they said, you know what, I hang up that uniform in my locker and I'm done. I don't have to think about it. Detectives, you're going home and thinking about it. There's been times I'm waking up in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh, especially on that crazy case where I'm like, okay, what can we do next strategically to keep these people safe and to investigate and do this and do that. And they relied on my report. They relied on evidence that we found. And because sometimes maybe the client won't or the victim won't say much or maybe not remember something. Yeah. And that may not get transferred to the police. And then I made sure everything was in there. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm always scanning.
Constant.
Yeah.
Well, what I love that you just said was even in your downtime, you're thinking, how can we keep these people safe? And that's, to me, not only physically, but mentally as well. How do we keep these people safe? That's says a lot about you and what you do.
I appreciate that. And that's what I've geared the stuff that I've been doing online to, because I think we're at a point where there's just too much going on. And I'm getting calls to do police, work and stuff and law enforcement jobs. And people need to kind of take ownership of, their safety at their homes, because burglary is a top crime. They're, theft. You need to keep charge of that. We had a case where the guy got his camera stolen out of LAX. We ended up recovering it. He recovered it on his own because the police didn't end up coming to we had it. We found it. And he had air tags and all that. So there's things that people can do for themselves and their families and their friends to keep ownership of that.
And we want to trust people, but clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about you and what you do, give us all your social medias, your website, whatever, your phone number if you're comfortable.
So we've got the PI Files, the podcast that's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And then we've got the Instagram, Peterson Investigations, and then on TikTok as well. I mean, we're all over. We're out there.
You have to be these days.
You're absolutely right.
It's your calling card.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah. So one last question, unless Annie wants to chime in.
Yeah. So if someone were to sit in the car with you during a surveillance, what would they realize? What would that look like for them? And I guess surveillance seems boring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Depends on the case.
well,
I call this a
is true.
ride along, and I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be fun to ride the day in the life with Eric in his
I did a
car.
ride along when I was in grade school.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny with Costa Mesa PD.
Okay.
It was funny. Me and two other kids, and we were in the car with the cop all night long. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So, is that the most boring part of your job? Is there surveillance?
It can be. I think it's 80%, if not more, 80% than 80% boredom, and then maybe just a small percentage of, oh, you got something. It depends on the case, and then the intel. So when a client calls, I always say, the more intel you have on what we're doing or what you want us to do, the more efficient we can be with our time, your money, all of it. But yeah, I mean, some of the cases like the thefts, those were very active, and then the one we're doing right now is very active. But yeah, if sometimes you're waiting for somebody to leave or somebody to go somewhere and do something.
So is surveillance more for evidence, or if you see something, do you act on it? Like if it's like theft?
More for evidence, and then, that one that we did with the attempted murder, that was calling the police immediately.
Yeah.
But the majority of it is evidence and gathering.
And get to know their routine, perhaps, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that oftentimes the first surveillance is, what do they do? What are their patterns?
All right.
I find it all very fascinating, just really fascinating, because there are so many aspects to it. And again, the different hats you have to wear, and just, and how long is your typical case? Like, because I'm wondering how involved you get with your client, especially on the real intimate ones, right? So how long does a typical case last?
Maybe less than 6 months, depending on the circumstances. Some of the family ones, it could just be one and done, one day. The other ones could be months. And then that big case took years. And I got to know them really well. They got referred to me because of our neighbor. So they don't live too far away from us. And so they were already kind of in the circle of kids going to the same school, all that stuff. So we got to know them really well.
That's really interesting, because you can literally build relationships on this, because you get to know them so well, right?
Intimately.
Yeah, so intimately in some cases, I would imagine. So you then just stay friends, or how does that work?
That's not typical in that particular case, because my wife had already met this person previously, and then but it was an interesting dynamic, because I would know I've got a confidentiality clause with my clients, and I don't tell anybody anything. And so there was times where I wouldn't say anything to my wife. I'm like, whatever. And then eventually they, the wife client would say something. Like, okay, yeah, that's true.
Right.
But it depends, and I'm choosy. But they're great people.
Have you ever ran into someone after you've solved like an affair case? Have you ever ran into the person who was
Here you are with the forensic.
right? I know.
It's
all about the affairs.
That's a great question. And give a little head nod.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see you.
Yeah. And here's the deal. I have employees, so I'm not really the one in the field.
Yeah.
a lot of times. So, yeah, and a lot of my employees live in different places.
Yeah.
I use people that you would never know. A lot of them aren't even law enforcement, former law enforcement. No.
Can I apply?
Yeah. Like you'd be perfect. You'd be perfect. Yeah.
Oh, no.
You heard
Please
that.
don't put
Yeah.
these things in her head.
Yeah.
Please.
You don't know how
no,
many
we'll
texts
talk,
and
we'll
calls.
talk,
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll exchange numbers.
We can Cagney and Lacey.
Yeah. Exactly. There you go.
Well, it has been
my
an absolute pleasure, Eric. And of course, both our minds, I'm sure, had tons of questions. So we're going to have you back
Yeah,
on
for
at
sure.
some point.
And then I got to get you guys on.
yeah, that'd
on
be
mine.
fun.
Yeah,
That'd
yeah.
be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do any background checks.
Yeah. I want, yeah.
But yeah, so thank you for your time today.
Anytime.
And I encourage anyone who would like to know more about this gentleman and what he does, please reach out for him. And yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Very interesting. And
We can keep going.
intriguing.
Yeah.
Take
To
care,
be
folks.
continued.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
We
Anytime.
really enjoyed this. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Likewise.